Guys, I'm Jacob. I'm here with Felix and Panda, and this is going to be episode 1 of Grassroots Stories, where we talk to different people in the industry about how they started their career, and we're going to give advice on how you can get your career started as well. What are the kind of things you need to do, look forward to doing, and just stuff in general. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. I'll start off with me, Jacob, as I said. I work as a freelance esports director, TD, and also EVS/replay. And I have a big passion for using vMix, so I do a lot of educational content about that. And this is pretty much a show that I made with Felix to try and get more educational content about esports out there. And on to you, Felix.
Hey guys, I'm Felix. I am 28 years old and I am mainly an EVS operator, so doing replays and highlights on esports broadcast. I started in regular TV and just advanced into esports like a couple of years ago. And yeah, this is what I do for a living. So what's up, Panda?
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, I'm Panda, or my real name's Matt. I am a caster, commentator, analyst, and host for primarily Fortnite, but esports in general. I do some voice acting and some content creation on the side, but that's primarily me. Just a little bit about me, and yeah, I was super excited. Jacob hit me up to be a part of the first episode, and I was like, yeah, I gotta hop in here.
Yeah, it's a huge pleasure to have you. Obviously, we've worked quite a lot together in the past, and we always have a blast whenever we work together. So, one thing I really want to ask you is it's going to be quite generic, but how did you start? Like, how did you get to where you are? What were your first steps, and what helped you achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in 2020. And for those that don't know, I worked in corporate real estate and hospitality before I was in esports. So I created a very, very healthy and established career in hospitality. And in 2020, COVID hits, right? Everything's going on. I had streamed a little bit beforehand, nothing crazy. And so I started streaming again because I was at home, working from home. So I had that extra time. And sure enough, I came across the right people. I ended up hiring an editor full time and consulting with him. And then all of a sudden, one thing led to another. I got in front of Monster D Face because of that. And once Monster saw me, he saw the potential that I had. He heard my voice, saw that I loved quality. That was a big thing for me, whether it was the camera quality, audio quality, everything. And he saw that as a huge advantage to have. And he gave me the opportunity to join his podcast, the Fortnite podcast, which is the #1 Fortnite podcast out right now. And so it was a huge honor. Got hopped on there, and then within a few months, Monster said, "You know what? I think it's time. Let's get you cast in shows." He gave me my first show in October of 2020, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I remember we did a show back in the day as well. It was the FaZe Elite Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my first interactions with Javier as well, Monster. It was a really funny story. Where basically one of the producers, he wasn't able to make the show that time due to an emergency. So Javier messaged me and said, "Hey, we've got a show in 1 hour. Can you do it?" He sends me everything, all the files. I boot it up, and then it was you on the show then, and that's where I originally met you first. So
Yeah.
everything kind of connected by luck, which was really awesome. And then here we are. Anyway, moving on to you, Felix. How did you start?
That's a little bit longer ago. I started doing EVS in 2014, so or 20 end of 2013, I think actually. So it's my 10th year now working in traditional TV and broadcast in general. So I started out at like a local German TV station doing Bundesliga games, and then it was during my studies. So I started studying like from 2015. I started doing EVS during my social year in 2013. And then it was always like a side job for me in the weekends, doing some Bundesliga games every now and then. And then I finished with my master's degree in 2020. So right when COVID hit, I finished my university and then basically transitioned into full-time EVS broadcast and transitioned into esports. I had my first esports gig in 2018, but did all kinds of traditional things like from game shows, horse riding, car racing, whatever you can imagine. I like handball, basically everything in traditional TV, but I always was like a gamer at heart. So getting into esports broadcast was always one of my biggest dreams. And yeah, this is basically where it started for me during COVID, where I just straight out had back-to-back productions all year. And that is also where I met you, Jacob, by quite a coincidence, and where we became friends, and in the end also launched Grayscale together.
Hmm.
So I think my story is like from traditional TV. I think it's quite a unique transition, because I have like this TV background, and working in esports can be very different, but it's also super interesting because you meet a lot of nice people, and yeah, like you. So how about you?
Hell yeah. Yeah, we met. It was also quite a bit of a coincidence. We ended up working a show together. I was sitting behind you, and I was always interested in seeing what your machine does. So I was like, let me have a look. And then eventually you taught me as well. And here we are. So my story is also a bit different as everybody else's is, getting into esports. I was always a fan of games. I'm only 22 right now, so I haven't really had, I guess, a proper job outside of the esports industry, apart from being a scare actor, but I'll go into that later. Um, I started off ages ago, so I moved here when I was 6. I was originally wanted to be a pro footballer, soccer for any American viewers. I do prefer American football though, just to say. So I moved here, and I basically got my first computer that my brother bought me with his student loan money. And ever since that happened, I bought Minecraft back when it was in beta. And me and my friends tried making YouTube videos on Minecraft and just, building a house and stuff and then recording it on Bandicam. And because my laptop was so slow, I tried plugging in a USB so I can save the content to the USB to not overdrive my hard drive. So it was a bit of a struggle back then, but I always wanted to make content, do something with the camera. I kind of had that creative outlook. And as I got older, I went to school. I was really good at IT, computer science, and I really took a big interest in film, video editing. So in my spare time, I was editing memes, doing that kind of stuff. And I came across esports. In 2010, my brother was a big TSM fan, and I've been a TSM fan since. So I've been following the industry since then when I was super young. And I tried doing my own thing, and one thing came to another, meeting the right people. I was playing a game of PUBG and I met somebody who gave me a small internship so I can learn how to do video editing for esports companies. And then I worked with Rogue, Besiktas, a few Turkish teams. And I kind of started going from there, and it kind of snowballed on and on. When I got towards the university level, I applied to university, and I used all my experience that I had video editing. And I met somebody called Kevin. His name's ManX Asen on Twitter. He's a really great dude, and he kind of introduced me to broadcast. And I tried combining my creative skills with broadcast, so putting everything I know into that. And I started learning vMix when the pandemic hit, doing a lot of remote online broadcasts. And one thing led to another, doing one broadcast, doing another, and then another, and another. And now it's been 3 years or so, and I'm here going from arena to arena, studio to studio, meeting awesome people, and just working on sick productions. But essentially, it was all about meeting the right people, learning from everybody, and just doing my thing, just kind of sticking to what I wanted to do and gathering those skills and combining them to become something that I wanted to be. And here I am.
Yeah, that's
Um,
actually quite common for me. It's basically the same story. I always was interested in media and video production in general, like buying my first DSLR, going out and making content, like posting Pokemon walkthroughs on YouTube, even when the term "Let's Play" was not a thing, like back in like 2011. And all those editing, like being familiar with the software and just like focusing myself on it, on video editing, photo editing, in the end came back to me in the sense of that I got asked if I wanted to have a look at an EVS system, which is like, for those who are not familiar with it, it's the high-end replay system that you use for all kinds of big broadcast systems. It's hardware based, it's super reliable. It's like used for all kinds of biggest sports productions, being it the soccer World Cup, football World Cup, or even like the Super Bowl now. So it's that's how I got into it. And then basically just learning, meeting new people, also me getting over into esports because a friend recommended me back in the days. And that's basically how the whole transition went. So for me, also being interested in media in general, getting out, doing stuff, and then meeting the right people at the same time while being prepared. That's basically how I got into it as well.
That's pretty impressive. Look, I had some experience right in front of the camera. You guys had behind the scenes, and it's always interesting to me to hear these different stories and these different perspectives because realistically, like there's so many different ways to get in esports, and that's why this podcast and this show here is so important for everybody at home that's listening because you have three different very unique perspectives of ways that people got in. Jacob, 22, has really never held a formal job, but was able to break into the esports space. And he is one of the best producers, period. Like when I have a big show or something that I know needs to be taken care of correctly, Jacob is the guy, right? And now learning about Felix's background here from TV and traditional media, transitioning over to esports, like you can tell there's several different paths to get into this. And honestly, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to hear more about your guys' story and continue this conversation.
Yeah, 100%. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about more is sports. So, yeah, going back into our stories, Felix had a lot of background in sports. I never had that background, but I always enjoyed watching sports. When I moved here, like I said, I wanted to be a footballer originally, but then I got into computers and started doing that. But I always wanted to break into sports, but never managed to. So over the years, I kind of grew apart from it. So I tried to stick to it as much as I can. So in university, I did a bit of American football. I was playing on the D line. Um, I couldn't walk for a week when I did my first training session. That was super fun. And then sadly, the pandemic stopped me from attending further and doing more and more. But I really, really want to break in and try and attempt to do some sports broadcast. I've had colleagues like Felix and some other people in recent shows that do work sports broadcast regularly, and they always talk about how much of a different experience it is compared to esports. Esports is a bit more laid back. It's not very punishing when you make a mistake. And obviously, rates and pay is varying levels. Obviously, esports is still a new industry, even though it's a very wealthy one. There's layoffs and everything happening. But one really big interest that I had was asking you, Panda, would you ever be interested in going down the sports route? Have you ever done anything sports related?
So I've not done anything as of now, like on camera sports related, right?
Hmm.
I've had some conversations with some people locally here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Had a conversation about some college games and some things like that, and also radio. But I haven't made that leap yet. I'm kind of like at this point where I am in esports that I'm doing so much, really like so many really cool things that I kind of don't want to divert from it too much. But I definitely think down the line, especially in the caster, like analyst commentator role, you kind of have to get ready to pivot because esports realistically is a young man's game and we don't stay young forever. So, especially when it comes to the on camera work. So, I do think long term, I can see myself transitioning into something sporting. Now, this year, my goal for the end of 2023 is I want to get into boxing. I want to be a commentator for a boxing event. Yeah, the goal is definitely the crossover boxing scene. A lot of what's going on there with like Misfits boxing and Kingpin boxing. I love that stuff. I love boxing in general, but I think the crossover scene is very much where I would fit in most because I'm currently already kind of covering pro influencer titles in esports. So if I transition into boxing, I can give a unique perspective in that way. So I definitely think that's my biggest goal here for 2023. I mean, I got so much stuff going on. I wouldn't be mad if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I love boxing as well. UFC, MMA is also one thing that I love as well. I do a bit of training on the side whenever I have the time and I'm not traveling. And it's just something, just take my mind off everything and just go and chill, have fun. And I also picked up the camera recently as well, filmed a few boxing videos, got some people practicing in the gym and stuff, and it was like super, super fun. Now, my question as well to you, Felix, is working in sports and esports, what would you say are like the main differences? How is it working in sports? How is it working in esports? Do you have a preference for which one you like?
Oh, that's a tough one, honestly. Well, for me personally, I I don't want to make it sound too harsh. Obviously, TV was very interesting because you kind of have the big stage right in front of you straight away. But I personally never was really interested into sports too much. So friends of mine were always like, "Oh, bro, you got to see all these Bundesliga matches or horse riding or whatever." But for me, it was obviously I did not dislike it, but it was not that I was like fascinated about it the way I am about, for example, Counter Strike. So for Counter Strike, I worked basically every big event in the last 2.5 years, and it's still fascinating for me because I always used to watch it when I was still more into playing it because nowadays I basically don't have enough time to play it anymore. But For me, the biggest difference is definitely still kind of the. Oh, it's hard to say because more and more esports companies are getting more professional out there, but you have more people that don't have that much experience starting out in esports, so it can be a little bit more chaotic at times. Again, being said that those vary a lot, that experience varies a lot depending on who you work for and with who you work for. But in general, I think TV in most scenarios may still be a little bit more structured and professional. And obviously, people are way more strict. So I had a replay of mine run into a freeze during like a primetime game shows on Friday night because it was a miscommunication from the director and me. So I ran it too early, it went into freeze, and the guy just straight up shouted at me, the producer, and everything went down basically in that truck. But if something like that happens in esports, it's not really big of a deal. So people are way more chill. You're way more on level regarding your colleagues, so you have more impact on the show directly. So if I can give suggestions to the director or the producer coming from my other shows that I did, or perspective, or sometimes even regarding content, um, you have a bigger influence as an individual behind the camera. So that I think is the main difference. Like, not talking about salaries. I mean, that always varies from TV and esports. I had jobs in esports paying better than traditional TV, but also otherwise. But also, one thing to consider is maybe the working times, because in esports, days tend to get pretty long usually. And then I recently did the Handball World Cup for the German broadcast, and those days were like 4 hours. It was a 4 hour show. And for me, it felt like, I mean, it was not easy. It was more stressful. It was more dense, more action put into that short time. But you don't have those sometimes exhausting long days that you tend to have in esports.
Okay, yeah. So I I hate working long days, but sometimes like when I like get my mind onto what I'm working on, it just seems like a blur pretty much. So we start off the day, it's first best of three. We look, and it's the last best of three already. It's been like 15 hours, but having so much fun with the people we're working with, esports can seem pretty short, even though the days are long, if you have
Yeah.
like a good kind of environment around you, yeah. And a lot of the shows we did with Fortnite, for example, we would do the European show, we would do the American show, and then the other region in America. So we would go in the evening and leave at like 7 a.m. in the day. And then obviously being in another country, I want to get a bit of exploring going. So I would like wake up in the morning on like barely any sleep, go explore a bit, eat some tacos, bike back, sleep for like a few hours, and then go to the studio again and repeat for a whole month. So yeah, the days can be brutal, can be long. Um, and in my opinion, the way to combat that is everybody's different. I kind of like having a sense of adventure. I love just going out non-stop, doing different things, and I can function on less sleep. But I still try and get as much sleep as possible. Don't think that I just sleep like 1 hour a night and then just like I'm dead for the next week. No, I try and get as much sleep as I can, but I try and use every minute of the day with purpose. I want to see stuff, I want to do stuff. And for me, going out, having like a drink somewhere in a nice place, having some nice food before going to a show, it helps me a lot. It helps me mentally, it helps me physically. I can go to the show happy, energized, and then just go through it and then repeat that next day. Some people want to just rest, chill in the hotel. It's different for everybody. Now,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, yeah, Felix loves the
Same here,
rest.
Felix. Look, man, I miss being 22, Jacob. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yo,
When I
same,
can
bro,
when I
same.
can sleep on like a few hours of sleep, get up, do my thing. Like, listen, I'm gonna be honest. I'm 30 now, and while I am out of my 20s, I genuinely feel like the day I turned 30, I lost like 60% of my energy. I started slowing. I If I don't sleep 8 hours, it's like I slept no hours. Like, it's crazy the difference.
Don't
No,
do
I
me
have.
like this, man. I'm yet to turn 30 and I still feel absolutely the same way.
Get
The amount of
ready.
days I woke up early and Jacob pushed me to do some crazy things, I can't even count them. We spent literally months together in like several countries working
Mhm.
together, and he's always been pushing me. But I want to talk about a point that you mentioned earlier, Jacob, because I think the point that I mostly forgot about is obviously I said that people are more level in esports regarding like hierarchy, but people are, I definitely connect more to people working in esports. You have like the same common ground being gaming and at least some degree of interest for the game. So people are way more chill. You can talk a lot more on intercom, have a lot more fun, while it's obviously still remaining professional, right? I mean, that's still the product still has to be great, but people are down to joke more around. But yeah, man, those days, and yeah, for me, it's mostly just rest. Besides the one we got a ping pong table one time, then
Oh yeah.
we straight out just like played until 2 a.m. And I somehow still had more energy the next day. It was crazy.
The ping pong tables were the best days.
Legendary.
I actually had a talk with my future employer, and the first thing I said was, "Do you guys have a ping pong table?" And they said, "We don't, but we could get one." So might have a ping pong table there. So sharpen up your skills. If we ever meet, if you ever see me, and there's a ping pong table anywhere, we'll go have a battle. We took ping pong so seriously that we even made some broadcast graphics, and we were going to stream a tournament in the studio, like in the warehousey bit, with my camera, get Felix's camera plugged in, and just stream it and see who would like become the ping pong champion. We never ended up doing it because we just didn't have time. It was just too busy of a schedule. But I have the graphics. I still have them. They're ready. At some point, we'll do it. We'll fly everybody in or meet at some big event, and we'll have a pro ping pong tournament.
Yeah, but spoiler alert, it's gonna be me.
Yeah, not really. You just you just backspin, and if someone can counter the backspin, you're trash.
It's funny, Felix. I am the 6-time U.S. champion at ping pong. I don't know if you know this. I've been playing ping pong since I was in high school. We had a league in the high school. In Florida, as you can imagine, Florida is a wild land, and that's why ping pong thrived there. And I am the 6-time U.S. ping pong champion. You can look it up.
I
My
will
name is
certainly.
My name is John Doe. You just look up John Doe, and you'll see 6-time world champion ping pong. No, I'm just kidding. But look, honestly though, I can smoke some people at ping pong, so I'm ready for this, Felix.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, and ping pong though, even though like we may think this is funny just chatting about it, that was like one of the things that saved us a lot of the time. Like having a really long day and then having like a 30-minute break and you can do a bit of ping pong for 10 minutes. You get energized, you go back in. It's just something to get you moving. And it's just fun. You know, everybody loves it. Having stuff like that is just so nice. Like if companies provide amenities like that and something to help you mentally, physically, or whatever to kind of support you throughout the day, it's just so nice, and it makes like them it makes it seem like they care a lot, which is super super good. And companies who do that, I appreciate them a lot. Because there's certain companies where you'll just go there, do the work, go home, or go back to the hotel. But the ones that really like go the extra step, provide like really good food, provide those awesome things like ping pong, for example, help you out with like a gym or something. Those are really nice to work with, and it just makes you like just I guess healthier. It makes you like enjoy the day more, and it just your morale goes up. The show will be better if the crew is rested, if the crew is happy. So that's like all to think about. But going back to kind of more grassroots things, from my experience working remote shows, I didn't really enjoy doing them too much. Um, when I was working, I would always be at home solo. During the pandemic, we couldn't really go anywhere, so I would just sit at home for weeks at a time, working on remote broadcasts every day. And when the remote broadcast would finish, it would just shut off, just completely finish. And there was nothing, just pure silence. It was just me there by myself, sitting there at 3 a.m. It's over. If you finish a broadcast in person, you're at least tired with somebody else next to you. You can have fun in the car on the way back. You can like listen to some fun music, and it's just nice and enjoyable, and your morale's like go up. But remote broadcasts, as I said, I hate being alone. I love working in teams, and I would always find myself solo and just kind of alone, just doing that stuff, and I really didn't enjoy it. So I guess the people trying to kind of get into the industry, you will have to start off doing quite a bit of remote stuff if you want to go down my route. Obviously, Felix's route was different. He was kind of working in a studio environment from the start. But me, I've spent a lot of time just doing stuff from my bedroom, just sitting alone, not really doing much, and that transitioned to working in studio. But to people, I would give advice is that try and take the same care as you would in a studio environment. So before doing a remote broadcast, go outside, have a walk, have like a drink, just do something. Not alcoholic drink. By drink, I mean a drink. some people think a drink is alcoholic when I mention it usually. Um, Depends where you're from. British people, if you say go for a drink, they think it's instantly alcohol. So get hydrated, have some fun before, prepare yourself, and just go do the show. When you finish, try and do something else as well. Um, Treat it like you're there in person, otherwise it's going to get really difficult. So mentally, kind of like treating yourself is really important. And I'm not sure if you guys ever had a similar feeling, but just constantly doing shows for like a month can just get really, really tiring, and you kind of lose the how can I say it, the kind of drive to kind of carry on. But hanging out with people, talking with others, just kind of helps kind of fuel that.
Yeah, 100%. I think when we were out in Denmark for the first 7CS back in studio, if it wasn't for the excursions in between the shows, like being able to go out, stay active, like it definitely would have been exhausting, especially like for me, right? I'm leaving my wife, my dog's at home, like for pretty much a whole month. So it's like still being able to do things and remain active and have a good group of people around you is so important for anything that requires you to travel. Unfortunately, like Felix mentioned, esports is unique in that way that people become a little bit closer. Now, obviously, I will say from a talent perspective, we see that more in Fortnite. Like the Fortnite crew, when it comes to talent, they're like family, right? There are other titles that are a little bit more cutthroat, like they're more concerned about their job and their future and stuff, which is understandable when you have a lot of people vying for the same positions. But in Fortnite, we're super lucky because everybody that steps foot on the talent range legitimately is like family, and they treat each other like family. We all stay in touch all the time. When new people come in, we welcome them. Like it is not as like hey, listen, I'm here for me, I'm gonna do my thing, you do your thing. If I do better than you, I keep my job. Like it's not those thoughts that you tend to have in some other esports. Not saying all others are like that, but I've definitely heard some interesting stories from other titles. So I can only imagine how that compares to traditional TV, like Felix was talking about. Because I can imagine like if you're in a position that's coveted, that's something that somebody wants. I could see people going to great lengths to try to take it.
Yeah, you're definitely right, man. In TV, it's more, like I said, when with more hierarchy comes more depending on sympathy. And obviously, sympathy and like connections play a huge role, like I said, because in the end, I got my position in esports initially through connections, but you also have to prove yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
connections can only get you that far because in the end, there's still people can like you, but the product still has to be good, right? So if you're not putting out your best product, if it's not good enough at that point in your career, um, obviously people are not going to book you anymore. So sympathy can get you only that far. But yeah, in TV, it's definitely like that. So people are more into like, yeah, being too nice. And I'm lacking the English term here, but I don't want to make it sound too bad, but definitely people tend to be over nice and
Hmm.
play other people holding up your position down or talk bad behind your back about yourself and stuff like that. So I think it's more, yeah, people tend to fight more over positions, I think. But in traditional TV, I feel like there's also more people fitting for certain positions. So obviously, there's more people trying to fit onto or get those, yeah, quote unquote, fewer jobs, right? But I think you're definitely right. So esports definitely feels more familiar regarding the lower hierarchy, but also like the people that could claim your position. I mean, but as you said, also it depends on the company that you work for. It depends on your colleagues and on the game that you work for. But overall, I think people in esports are definitely more friendly. Because
Oh
for
yeah.
me, with my position as EVS operator, so in production, it's one of I don't want to put myself out too much here in regard of my position, but EVS can be one of the key positions for broadcast because everything regarding play out, highlight, content does sometimes depend on EVS. But in traditional TV, it's like you're not treated as on the same level. You're treated way below a director or a TD. but not even like being talked to by the producer before the show starts. But in esports, you play like a big role in the product in general, and you're also integrated way more into that, into the show and like the whole rundown, and people talk to you and stuff like that. So definitely you feel more appreciated in esports normally.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. No matter what role I have, even as doing team comms, for example, the producer would come and speak to me. If they wanted something, they would speak to me. They would always just say clearly what they want and just be super nice about everything. So I feel like no matter what position you work as well, you kind of get treated a bit nicer, and you have access to speak with everybody. You want to talk to the producer, you can. You want to suggest something, you can suggest something. You don't really get blocked from doing it. But I want to kind of do a 360 and kind of switch the topic. Now, one thing I wanted to bring back is the topic of editing. So, Panda, you mentioned that you hired a full-time editor. Now, I did some video editing before. Felix has did some editing as well. He did a bunch of sick reels. He uploaded a few of them. You better make some more, Felix. They're cool.
Yeah. It's
Now my
coming,
question
Mo.
to
It's
you.
coming. I promise you, it's coming. I still got I got some aces up my sleeve, man.
Yeah, you need to get them out because they're sick. But my question is to you, Panda. Did you ever try and build upon those skills yourself a bit more so you can do it yourself rather than hiring somebody else? And if you did learn those skills, did you kind of use that to your advantage on creating content? Did that help you decide on how you record things? And did that also help you hire a certain person?
So I'll be transparent, right? When I initially
Hmm.
hired an editor, quick shout out to Brave Edits and Movement Digital, him and Monster doing big things over there. But um, when I originally hired Brave, the thought was I don't have time, right? I was working literally like 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and then I was streaming 6 to 10. That was my day, every day except Sunday. And so I was very, very busy. And so I just didn't have time to focus on that. Now, during my day job, funny enough, I was creating content because I was a director of training and development. So I would create content for companies to host on a learning management system. And that way I like these are the people out in the field would have training and an understanding of the responsibilities that they have in their roles. So that was my job during the day. So I had some, mind you, experience editing at that point. Now, transition to later in my career when I went full time and started making some more conscious effort to create content and do things, I spent more time to learn that style of editing because there are several different ways you can edit something, create content, etc. People don't always realize that. So gaming and general like YouTube content is a very different style of editing. So this is something I've spent the last few months paying very, very close attention to and studying quite a bit because I am preparing this year to do a lot of content. And I think from my experience to everybody else, I learned so much by taking it on myself and playing around with editing software, watching very intently YouTube videos and what they do in their edits and understanding why they chose those things. And that's probably the biggest value for anybody out there that is starting out, that wants to create content. Do not hire an editor first, do it yourself. And when you do it yourself, you learn such valuable skills and understanding of how to create a story that when it does come time and you can divvy off and send that work to an editor to do for you, you have a better ability to tell a story and create a narrative around your content instead of just like getting in front of a camera trying to record something. You send it to an editor, the editor's like, well, I don't know really what I can do with this because it's kind of all over the place,
Yeah.
and then going from there, because that's typically what happens nowadays. It's like these creators who never took the time to learn and understand editing themselves. They try to create content, and in reality, it's kind of a mess. And so the editor has to
Hmm.
pick up the pieces, and sometimes they can't always pick up the pieces.
I can definitely just agree with you a lot because also for me, finding my own style, just regarding photography, replays, or anything in my job, just was practice basically. Finding your own style, playing around with sliders and DaVinci, which is just basically free. It's not sponsored, by the way, but
Yeah.
there's so much free software. OBS is free. so much free stuff out there nowadays, which was not imaginable when I started out in TV, which was still broadcasted in SD, by the way. I'm just saying. But still, yeah, just find your own style. Basically, this will be one of my biggest advices. Like, look out for content that you like, from broadcasts that you like, see how they do it, try to recreate it. Maybe if you like to, just try and error. You don't have to post it. Show it to friends. Maybe get some feedback from friends. You can post it regardless. But before you hire an editor, I will definitely try to find my own style first, which I think applies to basically any skill or any job. Just like get yourself out there, be creative, and just find your own personality, because you copying someone else's style on yourself and trying to just like be the same product basically again will not get you so far, because it lacks personality. And I think in the long term, it's not very interesting for the viewers as well.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Like that is the most important thing you can do is learning something and then taking those skills and learning other things from it. So me, I have a lot of experience in various broadcast roles, so I can kind of um, take what you learn in video editing and kind of apply that to broadcast. I work with cameras, so I understand what ISO is, what aperture is, things like that. So I know why an image could be darker or lighter. If I'm working on EVS and I get a camera input that's like that it's I don't know, having some sort of issue, I could be like, oh, maybe the shutter speed of the camera is different, and I can help kind of understand what it is, and then help solve the problem faster. Because if you go to someone and say, hey, I have a problem with this, and they're like, what's wrong? And you're like, I don't know. They have to come to you, they have to look at what's wrong. If you go to them and say, hey, there's an issue with like the shutter speed, there's an issue with the frame rate, they can instantly go and fix it. And learning skills from doing various roles, no matter what you do. Let's say I work as a scare actor, right? So that's like the only job I ever had outside of esports. Um, my sister, me and her boyfriend, we set up like a warehouse that we just rented. It was just out of the blue. I don't know why we did this, but we built an escape room scare house, and it was really fun. It was pitch black in there. We had like night vision, CCTV cameras in the dark, and I created like a really cool soundtrack, and I helped plan out like when you walk into a certain room, the music changes, and that may seem stupid, but this show, for example, this podcast, we have a starting soon screen with music, then you transition to the cameras. You change music there. You fade it in a certain way. That kind of. Oh, and my camera's gone. Let me turn it on and off because it's overheating a little bit. Oh, there we go. We're back. Yeah. So I didn't plan for this. But anyway, going back to my point, learning how to create a storyline by working in a scare house and designing an audio track depending on which room you go in, that can apply for broadcast. If you're producing a show and you're going from one graphic to another, and let's say you're going to a leaderboard or a winner's graphic, you have a certain sound that makes the audience know that you're going to something else. I, for example, tab out a lot when I watch broadcasts whenever I'm watching something because I like to do a bunch of things at once. And sometimes, if I watch the same show a lot and I hear certain music, I'm like, okay, I know we're going into the game. So, learning those skills helped me understand that audio has like a really big effect. And I then took that and I put it into action in other work. Learning how to do a bit of audio, I understood what the limits are. Learning how to do EVS, I know what an EVS operator can do. So when I TD and I'm like, is there a replay ready? They're like, no. And I'm like, okay, so I know that it's not going to take too long to get it ready if it's like a reasonable request. So I know I can wait a bit and then ask again rather than asking all the time, is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready? Is it ready? I know what the operator can do. I know the level they can do it at. And it kind of helps you build a connection. So no matter what you do in your career, no matter what you do leading up to wanting to work wherever you want to work, everything is just super important to just take all the skills you learn, no matter how stupid you may think it is, that will come of benefit. Even talking to people, negotiating. Go on holiday and start haggling with people to like get some cheaper cloth or something. Boom, you can negotiate your rate.
I cannot stress this fact enough, man. Just that exact example that you gave with me saying, no, my replay is not ready, no, my highlights is not ready, and the TD not understanding how EVS works, because sometimes it can be limiting, even though it's an amazing system, right? But physically, you're not able to grab stuff. There was an error in the camera, and you say you're not ready, and they ask you why. And it's like you get to start have a conflict over the intercom. But if you know what you want and what you look for, And if me as a director, that was super interesting for me when I started directing. And when the replay operator said, "No, I'm not ready," like I was okay, yeah, no worries. And then I was communicating with the graphics if they had something, right? So there's always a way around. But also me just doing a highlight reel, um, having an intercom connection to the camera guy and saying, "Yo, can you give me that shot for a transition that I wanted to do?" So if you know like how to frame things, how to show things, how to highlight things, being as versatile as possible, you just can transition one role to another role and just apply it. And the same way that I apply my knowledge from my studies or from TV into esports broadcast. So like getting peer like points of views from more roles and more perspectives is key for me as well. Yeah. But
Yeah, like
I still like your Skyhouse thing, man. You showed me pictures. It's crazy.
it was so
I
good.
swear to God, Jacob, he just texted me in the middle of the night. He's like, "Yo, look at this. I just built a broadcast. I just had this idea. Let's do a paint drying stream. I hear you can't believe what I did a year ago." And he just comes up with the most random things. And at first, I was like, "Yeah, just let him talk." But in the end, he always tends to deliver. It's crazy. But that's a
Yeah.
different story. It's just this man is he's telling the truth. I'm just saying.
That's one point I'm going to bring up as well. Do it. Do it for real. Do whatever you want to do. You have an idea, just do it. What's stopping you? You want to do a broadcast? What is stopping you? You have a computer. What are you watching the stream on? On your phone, on Twitch, or whatever? You're watching it on your PC? You can download vMix, get a free trial. You can't run vMix, download OBS. Your internet isn't too good? Do it remotely from like a cloud computer. You don't know how to set up a cloud computer? Google it. That's literally what you have to do. Just learn what you got to do and just do it. You won't learn by not doing it. There's nothing stopping you from doing anything you want. You just have to have the drive for it.
Yeah.
If I come up with a stupid idea, I just do it. I didn't know how to use lighting for video, so I hit up my sister's boyfriend. I said, "Hey, can I go to the gym with you and just like film a video for someone?" So somebody was going to have an upcoming fight this weekend, and I'm like, "Can I film you a sick film?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So I took two lights in there that I bought off of Amazon for $100 pretty much. They were pretty bad, but did the job. I put them up on these like tripods all the way up, and I went on Google Images before I got in the venue, and I wrote 2-point lighting, and it's like have a key and fill light, one light to be at the front, and then one light lighting up in the back a bit softer, maybe bounce it off of something, and I'm like, you know what, let me try this. So when I recorded everything and went in post, there was a really cool cinematic look to the footage. Everything else was dark, so I had like these cool shadows, and I just did that by doing it. Now, a lot of the time, it doesn't work out. Like, a great example was when I was doing ESL Pro League. I was there with Mario Snake. He's a really good friend of mine, and he was on the analyst desk. And one day, because we normally always go out and just to restaurants have food, and he's a big food critic. So I was like, why don't we go and film something in a restaurant for fun? Why don't we make a food review? And he's like, yeah, sick idea. So we went to a random restaurant that looked really nice. We went in there, I'm like, hey, we're here to review some food. The restaurant was like really happy. They gave us like a nice seat and they brought the food and I started recording. We did like a review in the restaurant. It was so much fun. It was hilarious to do. But the biggest mistake I made was not setting the white balance on the camera properly, and the exposure wasn't good enough, so it created a lot of grain. And me not being experienced enough, I did not know how to remove that grain. So the footage was a lot grainier than I thought, and upon trying to remove it, it made the footage a lot smoother, so it didn't look too sharp. And those mistakes I never did again, but I did it by learning. And how did I do that? I just said, hey, do you want to go do this? And they were like, sure. There's nothing stopping you from doing whatever you want to do.
What you just said is funny because I literally just did that. We were filming an
Cool.
announcement video here just last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and funny enough, I did the exact same thing you just said. The footage was overexposed in one of the clips. I flew a person in for this announcement, so I can't just get their video again. And of course, it was their video that was overexposed. So I had to go in and sit there and adjust the colors and adjust the brightness and make it still look clean because it was shot with a Sony A7S III. So it's like still make
Mm-hmm.
sure it looks good, but also I have to make up for the fact that I made a mistake in the camera. And it's so much easier to just set it right the first time than it is to go back and try to fix it in post.
Yeah.
100%. But these are the kinds of mistakes that you learn from. Like I said, learning and doing, and these mistakes happen once. Like for me, I am 10 years in the industry and I still had like vmix bugging out on me, which was what I thought on like a replay job last week. But it was just a little setting that I never had heard of and which was just like bugging me out. And now I know, I mean, obviously it's not the greatest situation when you say in a broadcast, no, I don't have a replay because I don't know what's wrong, but in the end you figure it out. And you make this mistake once, and this is like learning by doing, because in theory you can't prepare yourself for every possible scenario. So I mean, that's how you learn. But in that regard, Pan, I'm very interested in how did you start out with like hosting and casting? Not, I mean, we learn your story, right?
Yeah.
But how did you like prepare? What did you start practicing, talking, VOD reviews? I would be very keen to know about that.
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, right? I am a certain type of individual that when I'm committed to something, I give 150%. And it's to my detriment sometimes, but also I truly believe that I wouldn't be here right now in the position that I'm in without all of the additional like effort that I put forth in anything that I take on, right? And so when it came to casting and hosting and getting my first opportunities, I spent days and hours each day watching. Like I would literally, so I told you what my schedule was before, right? It was
Hmm.
7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. was working, 6 to 10 was streaming every day without fail. Then I would like when I was prepping to cast for the first time, then I would go and from 10 to like 1 or 2, I would watch back FNCSs. I'd watch other broadcasts. I'd write notes of things that talent did that I thought was interesting and maybe I could incorporate that myself. I'd sit there and practice. Like, not everybody does that, right? Fortunately, I attribute a lot of my success and a lot of the things I've been able to accomplish to my work ethic. And I think work ethic is huge in an industry like this because realistically, you can't just work for yourself and not have good work ethic because you'll fall behind very, very quickly. So for me, that work ethic is kind of what helped push me along. Like a lot of talent, they've been in the space 2, 3 years before they get a main broadcast shot. I was there in 8 months.
That's honestly, yeah, work ethic is just so important. If you have the drive, people will notice it. If you know what you're doing, especially, um, people will notice it even more. And nobody basically wants somebody who doesn't have the ethic there. They want somebody who's going to put in 150% all the time. Because if you're an employer, who are you going to hire? Somebody who doesn't try as much, or somebody who's trying to overachieve and always make the product the best it can be? So everything you said, it's super important. I fully agree with you. Um, and one thing I wanted to ask as well, because we're nearing towards the end of the podcast. Last question was to both Felix and you, Panda, as well. What would be one key piece of advice that you would give to anybody who has nothing to do with the industry right now, but they watch it? They don't know how to they can get in. They don't know who to reach out to. They don't know how to start. What advice would you give them?
I'm looking at you, Felix. No, listen, you have a very unique perspective. I'm gonna let you dive in.
Actually,
Yeah,
we'll start with you, Panda, because we're just fixing Felix's mic.
you know what? Absolutely. Look, if I had one thing for anybody listening to take away from all of this, right? Whether you want to be a talent on camera, you want to work behind the scenes in production, or you just want to grow in esports in general, the number one thing for you is to do it. If you're not going out there and doing it like Jacob mentioned before, uh, whether it's even just on your setup at home, producing your own show, doing YouTube videos and all this other stuff, like you're falling behind. That's how most people start. For me, like even though I had the opportunity to connect with Monster and get a bit of a boost in my start, if it wasn't for me like putting in the effort ahead of that first show and then showing that I'm serious about being a talent, I wouldn't be where I am now. So for all those at home that want to do it, you just got to start doing it, and also create content. I'm gonna be honest; it helps you with on-camera stuff.
Content is 10 out of 10 to do every time. Like, here I am making some content. It's just great. Like, you can make it about anything you want, even if it's not esports related. Make it about sports. Make it about your favorite films. Do whatever you want. Like, it's just great.
You just basically also replied to one of the questions that I wanted to ask, like how important do you think content is? You replied to that. And how to get started with hosting, you also replied to that. But for me, it's quite, yeah, like I said, I started out with someone basically asking me if I wanted to do EVS. And that was like the luckiest shot period because it's such a rare system. And especially in esports, it's still so rare to find because it's so high end and so expensive for TOs to organize. But for me, just start putting together your own shows. If you want to get stuff behind the cameras, hook up friends. I mean, there's so many tools and so many free things to try out. OBS is incredibly powerful. Do a stream over NDI, do a LAN party with friends, stream it, have someone maybe just, you don't even need a stream deck. You can still do it all for free. You can do it with mouse, keyboard, shortcuts, anything. Set it up, try hooking up one microphone, maybe two microphones, switching scenes. Maybe if you're into animating, building a stinger, try out all different kinds of things, man. It's limitless options. And even if you just have one friend watching, two friends watching, you can still review it in the end, the same as Panda does with VODs, being it either from his own broadcasts or other broadcasts. And one in the chat from my chat on Twitch now says that's how we step started. Literally, I mean, there's so many options with free content nowadays. I'm gonna pull out the old man card here. I'm saying back when I started, that was not an option. We still have to rely on shareware or freeware. Not freeware, just shareware or any random kinds of things. Like OBS was not out there anytime soon. So right now, literally, is the best time to start. This like the hardware is getting so much better. Remote broadcast is getting so much better. You have all the tools you need in your hands. Even if you just want to start doing video editing, you don't have PC. Use your iPad. There's literally one of the biggest German YouTubers that started editing on his iPad. It's crazy, and yeah, the options are limitless. And if you look into the tech, if you look at YouTube tutorials, and there's so many options that you can just do right without even spending an extra dollar. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know you edit on your iPad as well. When you were doing your reel, you were editing on your iPad and on your phone. I would never do that, I promise. Always edit on my laptop.
It was
I could
just
never
the
do it
rough
on an
cut.
iPad.
It was
I
just
could
the
never.
rough cut.
Nope. I could never. But
Oh well,
if you
soon
don't have the
enough,
facilities to do it,
I'm gonna say this. Soon enough, iPad, like the iPad Pros, they're strong enough now to edit.
yeah,
But Apple just won't release Final Cut on them for whatever reason. So soon enough, that might just be a thing, Jacob. So I wouldn't knock iPad editing quite yet, especially with how powerful devices are getting, at least in the Apple ecosystem.
yeah.
Exactly.
Felix is. Your
Quote.
iPad is massive.
Yeah, it's the 13-inch Pro, and like the editing is flawless. I was using on Premiere
Yeah.
mobile, and it's just been a good experience. Also with the transitioning towards the Premiere Pro on desktop with the cloud syncing, it's been super easy. But that's not the talking point right now. But basically, yeah, they have so many options. I literally saw a guy from EVS sitting in the bus next to me, editing footage on his phone for like being uploaded, like his press footage. It's just get your phone. You don't need to start with an expensive camera. It's crazy. I showed a reel that I edited to a friend of mine yesterday, and he said, "Yeah, yo, you could clearly tell it's your new iPhone Pro. Like the footage, it was like, no, that's still like the mini from three generations ago." And he was like, "Yeah, no, you couldn't believe it. It's crazy. Like
Yep.
you can do so much with so little nowadays. Everything is getting so much cheaper in general, but also so much better. So just put yourself out there."
100%.
And to add to that, one piece of my advice would be is going to be a little bit different from everybody else, but make sure you have a passport ready and available to go. There are so many people, whether it's a pro or somebody working in broadcast or talent, who are like getting a sick opportunity, go to another country, and then when it comes to that, can you fly? Do you have a passport? Oh, I don't have a passport, but the event's in a week. Let me just go get one. It's not going to happen in a week. Especially in the UK, it's going to take months, and then they're going to forget. and then it's going to take another set of months. Make sure you have your passport ready. Mine's valid for 10 years, so luckily I haven't had to deal with it. But there's so many people I know who literally had an opportunity of their lifetime taken away because they don't have their passport available. And make sure you also understand your nationality and where you're from, and understand how travel works between certain countries and if you can work there. There's many places in Europe that you can go to and just work, just go through the border. But if you're flying to the US, you may need a visa, a work visa, and ESTA. Make sure you understand where you are, where you're positioned, where you live. Make sure you understand the power of your passport, so when an employee comes to you, they know that you can get there. Now, one big thing with me is I live in the UK, but I have a Polish passport. I can go anywhere in Europe, and because of Brexit, people in Britain have a bit more of a difficulty traveling. They need to go through a different kind of border, get like a stamp when they go in. It's a lot harder, and now as well, some people are limited to being in the EU for 90 days, and they can't really work there past a certain threshold. Make sure you understand where you are. Make sure you understand everything about your passport, everything legal wise, so you can get out there when you get given that dream opportunity that you have, because you wouldn't want to miss something because of something that is out of your, well, it is in your control, but sometimes could be out of your control. Make sure you have all of that covered. That's the most important thing that I would suggest.
Yeah, definitely. Like these things, they do happen regardless how professional the industry may be. So always be prepared for that, definitely. And if you tend to have food allergies, write them to the TOs in advance, because otherwise that's just one thing that just came randomly into my mind. Just be prepared, look up for things that and just pack enough, have backup, and just ask people. If you have colleagues that you know, reach out. People are very friendly, and just ask if you have any questions. Obviously, don't spam the travel organizer, ideally, because they have tons of work to do. But if you have like friends in the industry, even now and then, when I'm on the job, I just text Jacob, "Yo, can you help me with vMix here real quick?" Or he asked me something about EVS. It's happened
Hmm.
every any time basically. So people are friendly. They want to get you out.
Hmm.
We all want to create a great product in the end of the day. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, never hesitate to ask for any help you may want. And as Felix said, sometimes I had a problem, like, Felix, help me. What do I do? Please help. And he's like, I'll just press this. I'm like, oh, I knew that. I just didn't think of it. Or, oh, I didn't know that and I didn't think of it, so thank you. But yeah, it was great talking to you guys. Now, before we head off, I'm just gonna let you guys basically shout yourselves out and tell everybody where they can find you and any kind of thing you may want to add. So we'll start with you, Panda.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Lifewpanda. That's the best place to find me. I communicate with everybody there. If you ever have questions or want to know more about casting, talent, etc., I'm an open book, so you feel free to reach out. And also, the biggest announcement of my career coming in within the next 2 weeks. So
Hell yeah.
definitely make sure to stay tuned for that, because it's gonna be crazy, and this could start something pretty big in esports. That's all I'm gonna
Mm.
say.
I am definitely hyped for that. So I'm just gonna shout myself out and then give it up to you, Jacob. So you can find me on Twitter on Hopsi, HOPSI_. And for me, it's mostly broadcast things. I travel a lot for work, and basically you can find me every yeah, regarding every topic regarding esports. Hit me up if you have any questions about slow-mo work, how certain things are done in broadcast, or if you have any questions regarding setting up your own first stream or something, just feel free to ask me. And now over to you, my man.
Cool. Yeah, so as some of you may know, I'm Jacob. My art you can see below or on the bottom, your bottom left, my bottom right, because the camera's mirrored. Um, just find me on Twitter. Follow me if you want to. Not gonna force you to, but follow me on Twitter. Um, I'm addicted to Twitter. I love it. Um, and yeah, that's about it. I basically sometimes work with Felix, sometimes work with Panda, hoping to do more in the future. And with Panda's awesome announcement, I'm also going to have a really sick announcement soon too that I can't wait to share. And yeah, everything that we discussed today has been super beneficial, hopefully, to everybody listening, to anybody who is. Oh, and my camera turned off again. Sorry for that. It's when I press it, it just burns my hand. It's overheating so much. I need to buy a little cooling fan for it. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining me and Felix Panda. I appreciate it a ton. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll get to do this again at some point. And to anybody listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening from, if you have any suggestions, just hit us up on Twitter.
Definitely, please
message
do.
us, contact us. We'll see who we can get to come in to talk about their careers and make more of these. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you guys next time.
And also, quick shout out to our wonderful TD and Vision Mixer here in the background, providing this wonderful Twitch broadcast. At Alec Broadcast on Twitter. Make sure to check him out as well. And I'll see you guys and hear you guys at the next one.
He's an expert in virtual production and an ex-Smite